Hello, my name's Melanie Cambridge. Welcome to my home studio, where I create a lot of my lovely seascapes, probably the subject I'm best known for. So today I want to introduce you to painting seascapes, particularly techniques for painting a breaking wave and surf as it rolls up onto a beach. We are going to be using oils. I'm going to run through all the colours with you and the mixes and take you step by step through to painting a successful, simple beach scene. So come with me and let's make a start. So just before we start doing our own painting, here's a video clip of waves actually breaking on the beach down on the south coast. It's, as you can see, you get a dark ridge of welling up of the water before it reaches a peak and then crashes over onto the beach. And this is the effect that we're going to try and produce in our paintings. So I thought it useful for you to have a quick look at this video clip before we start. So let's take a start at the materials we're going to need for this exercise. Whilst I have my whole palette here, I have only laid out the colours that we're going to need. So I'm starting here, but we have a Naples yellow, a raw sienna. You could use yellow ochre, but raw sienna. Then I have cerulean blue, just a nice cool turquoisey blue, and ultramarine blue, and some burnt sienna. And alongside that, I've got some titanium white. And this is cold wax medium. This is a texture medium for oil paints, which we can mix into the colours to make them much thicker. So when we come to add the surf, it would be rather nice to have a little go with the cold wax medium. The one that I'm using is this one by Zest It, which is available from the SAA. Beautiful, has a slight lemony smell, as all the Zest It products do, so it's not particularly toxic and will make a real difference for those of you that want to use impasto, which is the sort of when we use the paint very thickly. I'm only going to use one brush. This is a number 6 filbert brush, a synthetic version of a hog hair. So we've actually going to treat ourselves to a new brush this time. I've got a bead pencil, which I've used to draw in the horizon, and I'm also going to be painting a little bit with one of the SAA's round-ended palette knives. I just prefer this to the more trowel-shaped ones. There's nothing special about it. It's just that it's my preference. So those are the paints we're going to be using. Let's now move on and take a look at the painting surface. This is the painting surface that I'm going to use. It is a primed. It's actually a primed MDF board, or a canvas board. A Daler Rowney board would be absolutely fine. But rather than paint on a pure white surface, I have put a tint, a thin wash of yellow ochre to tint it sort of a creamy yellow colour. This will help with the seascapes. It's sort of almost the beach colour coming through, and also gives a little bit of light into your skies to paint on yellow. Baudin used to paint on yellow, so I think if it's a good idea for him to do it, then why don't we give it a try? So that was a thin wash of yellow ochre. I used acrylic paint on top of the board to just thin it right down with water and then give a coat and let it dry. And the only thing we've done so far is put a pencil line across for the horizon. What I'm going to do now is draw in a wave breaking. So what we want to draw in to start with is a ridge, a line that is slightly angled up and straight across and down. And that's going to form the stripe that will be the backwash of the wave. And then if I just do a little line along here, you'll be able to see that that's where we're going to put the foam onto the actual. I've done it fairly faintly on this pencil. And then again here, we'll have a line which is going to be the foam coming up onto the beach and the beach. So we've got the back of the sea, the wave that's going backwards, it's actually going to go back this way, the foam that will come over, the shallow water, and the little line of foam as it runs up onto the beach. So that is all the drawing that we need in order to make a start. We're going to need several different colours for this sea. Starting at the back of the colour, I'll take some ultramarine blue and add a little white. But you can see that colour, the blue and the white on its own, looks rather harsh, not really sea-like. in order to soften it or grey it down a bit, I'm going to take a tiny bit of the burnt sienna. Now, burnt sienna, although it's a brown, it's a reddy orange brown, it can act as a complementary to the blue and will make it greyer. Now, in this case, I've put a bit too much in, so we come back and we start to get more of a sea blue. It's sort of softened by the addition of a little bit of burnt sienna. And that's going to be the blue for the back of the sea. Now, as we come down, we're going to need to just going to add a bit more blue on the side here. Maybe even a touch more burnt sienna. So that gives us a blue for the back of the sea and a darker blue for the wave that we're going to create. So those are the first two colours we need to mix, and we're going to put those on straight away using the filbert brush. I'm thinning my colours a little bit. Now, I would suggest that you just use a small amount of Sansador if you find you're sensitive to the smell of spirits, or indeed you can use a little bit of white spirit, just to thin the colours slightly if you wish to. So load up the brush with the first colour, which is going to be the back of the sea colour, and we'll make a start. Get the brush nicely well loaded with colour. Not too much pressure so that the bottom of the frill there stays clear of paint. So we start by putting some colour into this area behind where our wave is going to be. I'm using the brush on the flat, and where you want to bring it up to sharp, you can use the edge of the brush and cut in to make a flat area. Don't worry about putting any waves in at this stage. All we want to do is cover the board rather, with paint. So we take all of that colour, the first colour we mixed, which was the ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt sienna and a tiny bit of white to just bring it slightly paler, and colour that whole area. It's almost like painting a stripe. Moving on to the second colour that you mix, the darker blue, and put in this area of colour here, which becomes a stripe at the bottom, which is going to be the backwash of your wave. As the wave starts to break and comes in, it's going to look a little bit, unless the light was shining through, it was a really big wave, it's going to come in and look a little darker, as you saw on the sort of video that we watched of breaking waves. So we just bring that shape in. Again, it's, at the moment, we're just painting a stripe. What is very important is that you bring in a little bit of the dark underneath the area that I've reserved for the foam, for the breaking wave. So that comes into there, and we start to blend it in. And then, although this is quite dark colour, darker still, as the water comes up onto the beach, it's going to be much shallower, and we're going to need another colour. I'll show you how to mix that in a moment, but before we finish with these two darker colours, reload your brush with the same dark colour and just put a few little marks into here. I'm using the side of the brush to swish it across to make a few little suggestions that might be sort of slightly like the effect of ripples in the water. So you can see that this is there. That's a bit darker. I picked up a bit more dark paint. Just wet into wet, and that gives us a feeling that perhaps that's not just flat sea, but it's actually got a little bit of action going into it. So there we are. We'll just do that for now. And that is the first stage of painting the wave. So it's back to the palette. And as you can see, I've left these colours here. We may need a little bit of them later. And of course, because this is oil, that will stay wet. And I'm now going to switch to the other blue. Now this is the cerulean blue. It's a completely different blue, much more turquoise. Again, it's a little bit bright for our needs. So the first thing to do is make it a little paler. The only way you can make colours lighter when you're using oils is by adding some white paint. So that's the little bit of white in there. And again, I don't know whether I want it that blue. It's more of a sort of turquoisey colour as the way water comes up onto the beach. So we'll take a little tiny bit, that could even be too much, of, no, not quite too much, not quite enough. Little bit of Naples yellow, and it turns that colour slightly greeny. We've got more of a turquoise colour. It's going to be our shallow watercolour. As I'm mixing these colours, I'm just taking a little bit of rag and wiping off the palette knife to keep it clean. Really good to mix with the palette knife. It keeps your colours much cleaner. Now we might as well get a colour ready for the sand whilst we're at it. So again, a little bit of white into some, this is the raw sienna. So we get a colour that's sort of beach colour. You can see how much white you get through, and we probably will need a bit more white. So that's a nice colour for the beach. If you wanted to make it more pinky, you could always add a little bit of burnt sienna, but I think that's a nice golden colour for the beach. So we've got 2 more colours, and just before we resume painting, I'm going to take my tube of titanium white oil and just replenish that with a little bit more, because we're going to need some white for the foam as well. You may need a little bit of white to lighten up the other colours. I've cleaned my brush in the spirit, little pot. Give it again. Wipe the brush off when you clean it. Try to keep your brush fairly dry, because if it's full of sort of Turksy wash, then if it's full of the cleaning fluid, you will get a sort of muddiness, and you get if you're not careful, you get a build up in the brush that will then go out onto your paint, and make your paints look dirty. So now we're ready to paint the rest of the sea. I've started with the loading my brush with the turquoise colour we just mixed, which is cerulean blue and a little bit of white and a little bit of Naples yellow. Now that might look slightly harsh as we start to put the stripe in, but don't forget we've still got the other colours are still wet. So I'm going to start by mixing this into the sea colour. Just blend it in to start with slowly. And then I think if I just dip my brush into the colour that we use for the back of the sea, so you can see I've got the turquoise blue on that side and I've got the darker blue on this side, and I'm going to just blend the two together. And at the same time, blend up. You see these brush strokes are going upwards into this wave, and the same on the other side. Just swoosh them up a little bit, and that gives you, we want to try and link this area of shallow water into the area that's going to become our wave. Bring that out onto there. Might even be another little trail coming in, so that the turquoise blue has gone a little bit softer and it's coming together, and you're beginning to feel that might be a wave breaking just by when you blend one colour into another. Use very light pressure through your hand, otherwise what will happen is you'll push through one colour, you'll almost just spread the colours and see the canvas underneath. I'm going to clean the brush and add the beach. So dipping into the white, the beach colour was white and raw sienna. And the beach colour, you can see here, is almost the same colour as my canvas, because we tinted it yellow. If you remember, we use yellow ochre, which is almost the same colour. So again, just put a bit of beach colour into here. And that can go in fairly flat. So building up in stripes, we've got our back of our wave and a suggestion of the water coming. You can almost not worry too much about where this sea colour comes on. You don't need a hard edge. A hard edge is like a very clearly defined, that would be a hard edge, whereas this, it's all a little bit furry, a little bit blended together. So now we've got basically ready for the surf. I know I haven't painted the sky, but you can see the sky is not that important in this painting. It's all about a breaking wave. So this is where it gets much more fun. I'm going to use some white, but it won't be pure white. And also I'm going to use a little bit of the cold wax medium I showed you earlier. Going back to the palette, we could use just pure white paint for our surf. First thing I'm going to do, let's just mix in a little bit of this cold wax medium. You can use up to 50-50 mix, and can you see just how much thicker that paint is becoming? Look, if I do that with the point, those points will stay. The paint is now much more, we would call it impasto. And that's ready. Just add, I'm going to mix it all in, because maybe even a little bit more wax. I want to split that off and bring my brush across here, just dip the end of it, so there's a tiny little bit of colour, hardly any, you can't see that on there, and add it into the white that I've mixed up. So now we have the white and a slightly grey colour, because the foam, in order to get texture in the foam, it's not just all solid white. We're going to need a little bit of shadow, and what I've used is using that colour from the back to create, in effect, a shadow colour for my foam. Now we're ready to paint the foam. I've loaded the brush with the thick paint, but I've used initially the pure white. So this is the pure white with the impasto. It's with the cold wax medium and the pure titanium white. Taking it onto the brush, but bringing the brush strokes down like a sort of waterfall effect. So you can see what's happening here, and it's bringing that into a straight, where the water, the foam, the wave has come back and it's just beginning to drop, and it almost is like a waterfall. And this top edge is fairly straight, not going all the way down, sort of 2/3 the way down the area that I left for the foam, and at the same time taking the same white, just put a little sort of dribble along that, using the side of the brush to give the edge where the wave is just beginning to break there, starting to bring it into focus. Taking the grey now, so this is the grey we mixed, which was a little bit of sea colour and then a different technique here. Take the same, still texture on the brush, but I'm just putting some little swirly sort of pattern to create the feeling that the wave has got, it's breaking up, it's bubbling. And that gives you the feeling of a beautiful breaking wave. You can finish it off and keep to the grey rather than the pure white. When we did those blended swooshes, with a bit of paint on, just one or two very, very little swooshes with white. So you're adding a little bit of movement into the wave. Rather than using the pure white, it's softer. Even within this shallow water, a few little swooshes will make it appear it's got more movement. You see? Clean the brush, go back to the pure white paint, so titanium white and wax. Nice big lump of paint on the end of the brush, but you see, I still haven't got paint down here. It's only on the tip, or the top half. And where this water meets the sand, there's obviously a line of foam. So here, we just put a little wiggly line. I have to keep reloading the brush with paint, and quite delicately, don't be too heavy-handed doing this. Where you've got the water coming up onto the beach, you want a sort of a wiggly line, really, and in fact down here as well. Doesn't matter if it's different thicknesses, because it's what's got, you've got to try and show the fact that the water is coming up onto the beach, and that's crawling up onto the beach there. And then finally, we want a little bit of turquoise. I'm going to add a tiny bit of I'm just going to show you this bit because I want to mix another colour. Let's just switch back to the palette. You take a little of this turquoise blue and add it into your pure white. Can you see I've now got a much more silvery blue colour? Probably almost looks white on the palette. That's the colour that I'm going to use to put in a bit of wetness on this sand. This takes confidence, so you just want to take your brush and just streak it in like that. There we are. Very, very light pressure, quick movement. That's probably enough, just to give that sand a feeling that it's got wet on. If you press too hard, you'll get a green, because you'll be putting a very pale blue on top of wet yellow. But just by giving it a very quick swoosh, we've got that colour. The only part of our painting we haven't finished now is the sky. And on this painting, it's going to be a very flat, simple sky. You could have put it in right at the beginning, but I'm quite happy to wait until the end. And for the sky, we're going to mix up a slightly different blue. I shall show you how we do this. Go back to the palette. We've got very pale blue. This colour I've just used for the wet beach. That was my original turquoisey green for the shallow water, and these were the colours for the deeper water. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this relatively dirty brush, put a bit of the white, into this colour we had for the sea, and maybe add a little bit of the other colour, mix it all together. So we've got a blend, and we've got a sort of sky colour, because all of those colours, because they're all in the painting, they will harmonise with the colour. The sky will have all of those colours in it, so it will be harmonious. There's not very much paint there. If I get the palette knife and scrape it, I hope we've got enough. Because look, there's only a little bit of paint there, but thinning it with some spirit, I reckon we've got enough to put in a very simple sky. I thin the paint down, and in fact it's a little bit dark, so add a bit more white paint to that colour, just to make it. Remember, you've got to add white to get a lighter colour, and just very, very quickly and very lightly scrub in a colour for the sky. This is a very thin wash. You can hear the brush tickling away on it. And as you come down to the horizon, just add a bit more white. Go into your residual white and lighten it a bit, because the horizon there, the sky is often a little lighter towards the horizon. All of you who paint watercolour will remember putting in a graded wash. Well, this is an alternative in oil paint. And just bring that down, and the horizon is relatively flat. And there we've got a feeling of sky washed on to the end. But the key point about this, and in fact, when this is dry, you may need to re-straighten your horizon a bit, because with oils, it's quite difficult to get a beautifully flat horizon with wet on wet paint. And invariably, I end up waiting for the painting to dry and then putting another, just putting a little bit of the sea or the sky back in to make it do. But look how effective that technique has been in getting the sea, the colours, the wave coming in, the fact that the wave is white and also grey here, and then these bubbling bits of water coming up onto the sand. I hope you've enjoyed this experience. And that is my simple technique for painting surf and breaking wave that works on any beach scene. It's a technique that you can take and adapt into your own seascapes. I hope you've enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoyed that experience, and it's given you an insight into how you can paint waves breaking onto a beach. It's a technique that I use a lot in my own work. So to finish off, here's a small selection of some of my own seascape paintings to give you a little bit of further inspiration. And thanks again for joining me.